What's up everyone? So today we're going to fix this dryer real quick. And what's happening in this particular instance is the drum, if it's more weight than what you see here, it starts squeaking and the drum didn't move. So that indicates to me that a belt is slipping. So the drive belt for this whole thing, or the wheels that help support the drum are like binding or locking up, causing the belt to spin. So something like that isn't allowing this to spin when it has more weight than what you see here. This is probably, I don't know, maybe 5 pairs of jeans and a sweater. So let's get into this DIY fix and see what it's going to take to repair it. So first off, this is an old dryer, oldie but a goodie. And what you need to know is the model and everything, which you should have a tag like this. The model number for mine is this right here. And then you're going to input that in and basically put belts or whatever components you're looking for. And then make sure you also have the brand in it. KitchenAid doesn't make a belt for this really anymore. So there's a conversion where if you type this in, there's another brand that will actually basically cover this size as well. So just because you don't see your exact dryer or washer, whatever the parts are, there's always cross references because they're pretty much a standard size between certain brands. But first off, what we want to do is get this loose, so that way I could take this front off and then that drum should come out. So let's get into this part. So if you look on the back side, you see that there's a hinge right here. There's a hinge. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a hinge right here and a screw. You don't need to take anything off the back side. That just indicates that this thing's going to pivot. So make sure you pull it far enough away from the wall so it can pivot. These screws here are for the back panel, so don't worry about any of that stuff, any of this stuff back here. If you look underneath here, there's 2 screws. So these are the 2 screws we want, and these just so happen to be a Phillips. Of course, when you're working on any of this stuff, make sure it's unplugged, just because when you take this apart, you're going to have the motor and everything up behind the wall over here, and you don't want to short anything out. So basically what ended up happening is this drum, after it was spinning, and it would stop midway, remove some of the contents in here, and then it would kick back on. The way I tested that was I just basically pressed this button in and pressed the start button at the same time, let go of the start button of course, and held this in, and it will rotate this. Let me show you how. So hold this, press the start button, and as you can see the clothes spinning. So what would end up happening is these would get tangled up in each other and like compile to one side, and it wouldn't allow it to throw the weight to the other side, allowing it to rotate efficiently. And then it would have a high like pitch squeal noise, meaning that the belt's spinning on the outside, and it start to smell like rubber. And that's how I knew that we had a problem. So nothing like having damp clothes in here and your dryer not working, and it buzzes off and it says that it's done and your clothes are still wet. In that instance, of course, take out your clothes and let them air dry, or else you're just gonna have to rewash everything when you can. So the way this works is there's 2 wheels underneath the drum. There's a belt that goes around this, and if you look all the way in this corner here, all the way around, that's a felt ring. And that felt ring basically keeps a space in between the drum here and the back wall. And it basically allows all this to stay center with just that support. So it's a pretty interesting design that it relies on felt, you know, to hold everything centered. So what I ended up doing is using a flat blade screwdriver, and I kind of popped this up already for you. But as you can see, there's a clip there and a clip there. It's like spring loaded, and you just go really close to these areas, slide it in, pry up, slide it in, pry up. You could put painter's tape on something like this so it don't mar anything, or you could use a like a putty knife or a panel removal tool, or some type of plastic wedge where you just bang it in there until it separates. Okay, So once you got those two done, this whole thing will hinge upward. And as you can see, mine's hitting the back because you need to bring it forward. So this is what it should look like when it's all the way to the rear. And this is your drum. This is your felt. It's a felt bearing. Here's the felt up front, right here. And as you can see, this just free floats in there. So you see all that flex. Of course, your heater. It's a good idea while you got all this stuff open to definitely vacuum it. As you can see, this hasn't been open probably since the 80s, since it was brand new. But the heater here, I mean, look at all this lint. So I'm gonna vacuum this out. It's a good idea to probably open this thing up maybe once every couple of years and just do maintenance on it, just clean it up. Here's the belt itself. So as you can see, that's what it rides on. Okay, and it's pretty banged up. Okay, you have a part number here. So if yours is new or newer, it's maybe a good idea to open yours up anyway, just so that way you could take a picture of all the component part numbers before they wear out like this one did. Also, keep in mind, newer stuff, it's definitely going to go out before something older like this. These things are just built to last compared to today's thing. So in order to get down there, which is where the motor is, it's basically that screw there, and there's another screw there. That's that switch that I was toggling to turn on everything. But like I said, make sure it's unplugged. But just those two, and then this thing should slide up and then lift off, because there's down here, there should be clips that this whole thing slides into, and then that clips onto. So it's a pretty simple, straightforward design. And they make it like this just so they could keep costs down as well. So this is what the screw looks like. I just put it on this little drive to quickly take this off. It wasn't that hard. But this one here in particular was an 8mm. Yours might be a different size, so keep that in mind. It might not all be the same size. So what I just realized on mine is it has a secondary panel here that cams down. Most of these are one piece, which allows me to actually see the motor in there, which is nice. This front panel still has to come off because I can't put the belt on without removing this face. But at least you could see it. So this inspection panel, if you have one, you could probably just pop this out because it's just held by these little spring clips. You just basically pull on it and it pops out. Allows you to vacuum and clean stuff up in here. But also when you're running it, at least you could come down here and inspect and see where there's an issue. Just don't touch anything. You have your gas valve here. Don't touch anything when it's live. But for this one here, I need to take that screw loose. That screw loose. It doesn't have to come all the way out. Just loosen them up because they have a slot right here. And then I'll be able to slide this up. Okay, so what I ended up doing is sliding this off, this little hook right here. Just sliding it off. These just slide in so I can remove the wires down a little bit. And I tilted this to the side so that way I could get it out of the way. But as you can see right there, that and on the other side is where these were connected to these springs, and that's basically for your door to fall forward and then spring back. So these will have to be reconnected to make sure your door will swing. And then this is what the drum looks like. So as you can see, it's coming apart over there. So right here. So this drum, if I remove this belt, this drum will slide all the way forward and come off if I wanted it to. But that's all it is that, and then this felt, it rides on. And that holds everything in there. Super simple design though. Okay. Okay, so this is what the bottom of it looks like. As you can see, this is a spring. So this is the idler here. So when this is up, it basically puts tension on the belt, so that way it doesn't just spin on that shaft there, the drive shaft. That's a brass fitting. So these old ones had super quality parts in them. I think the new ones nowadays are all plastic. So I'll probably have to replace, maybe even replace this idler. It doesn't seem worn, but Maybe that's something to replace in the future. As you can see, the wheel's right there, all the way up in there. So that wheel just holds the drum. It basically rides on a feature like this, so like a lip, and that holds it in place. And then there should be one over here, back there as well, that does the same thing. Okay, and then of course this is the gas line and stuff. So if you look at this belt, it's super hard. As you can see, it's sliding right there. It's loose because it's so stiff and old, but you can see all the cracks in it. There's a crap load of cracks all the way around this thing. It's probably not going to focus too well, but you can see all the cracks in it. So my belt is measuring 3/8 wide. The cross-reference one from the KitchenAid site says that the 1/4 inch one is the one that's going to cross-reference here. Maybe it's just because this is so old they changed up the width of the belts. That's a possibility. But that being said, you basically take the width of this, and then you also count the crevices up here. So each one of those little ribs, the long rib, not the cracks, but the ribs themselves. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 ribs. Unfortunately, they don't have this one, or I can't find it. I'm gonna keep looking, but the one I end up getting was a 1/4 inch wide with only 4 ribs in it. Okay, because that's the one that they said would cross-reference. So that being said, hopefully that works out. Just as long as it's not wider than this belt is the key, because it won't fit on the pulley. At least if it's smaller, it just won't go all the way to one side. And then the last thing would be the length of this belt. The one that cross-references says it's a 42-inch belt, but I won't know until I take this apart and actually measure this one out. But what some sites say 42 inches, and then other sites say approximately 42 inches, and then others will say 42¼ inches. So who knows? This is such an old dryer that some of this stuff is hard to cross-reference nowadays. But as you can see, this is the idler, and these two little things just clip into there like that. So it cams into there like that, and then it springs back and forth. So you can check that. You can see my pulley itself right there, the motor, all the wheels with the bearings and stuff. So they almost look like scooter wheels. Okay, but they're probably temperature rated and stuff like that, so the durometer is different. But now I got all this out, it's time to clean it up and get it all situated. So upside down, right in that spot, here is all the wiring diagram, all the information you need about your dryer. Okay, so this is the belts, part number 341241, made in USA. This is the cross-reference, and it isn't the right one. Of course, we knew this kind of in a way. Look at the size difference. Okay, look how many ridges it has, which we knew, but I already ordered it because that's what it cross-referenced. So hopefully the spacing in between these grooves, between the peaks and valleys, are the same distance apart. Hopefully it's just thinner, and hopefully this one's more stiff with this backing. It's like a heavy fabric, like a plastic fabric. So hopefully that keeps it from stretching or whatnot, and pulls enough tension, since this is shorter by a couple in it. I think like 3 inches shorter than the original. So hopefully that adds some tension to it, and that's why they allowed for this to be cross-referenced. Okay, so as you can see, I just slid this back on, put the belt on. I used the box that it came with as a prop. It's the perfect height to help hold this in, so that way you can see everything. When you make your way down here, just make sure the belt's not twisted. As you can see, look how close it is to the shaft there and the sprocket or the belt. Of course, this doesn't take up the full width of this pulley here, but also this idler is super big compared to even the old one. This is like 1 inch wide, which is pretty big anyways. So what I did is I made sure that the belt was all the way to the back of the grooves, just so that way it's less strain on the motor. Because if it's on the outside or closer to you, it just puts more leverage on that motor, which I'm just trying to mitigate how much leverage is put on there. So I pushed it all the way as close to the motor as I could. And then of course it's not gonna track true yet. So what we're gonna have to do is on here is put all this together. Once it's together, and then spin the drum so that way it could track itself before using it and turning it on. So now once you got this far, just reverse the process to put everything back together the same way you took it off. It's probably going to be a good idea to record like I'm doing, so that way if you do forget some steps, you could look back at your video and see exactly what you took off and how you took it off. So of course what I ended up doing is making sure the screws were still loose, slid it on like that, did the same for the opposite side there, and then slid this whole thing down, aligned it here with the seal, and then started my bolts hand tight just to get everything on. And then I'll tighten them down and then put this cover on last. I'll spin it first to make sure everything tracks. Okay, so I have some play back and forth. You can see in the corner, some play back and forth. And that plays there because this is going to move a little bit. Just double check yours before you take yours apart. Because all that back panel is held on by is that right there, which is just a slot, and it looks like it's like VHB tape to the sides. And that holds that back panel, and then of course these are screwed in, so that's at a fixed distance. And then also you could see this material is kind of soft, so it's going to have a little give, which is normal. And then of course this is old, so it's not going to be as rigid as a newer one. But you just spin it like this and make sure that belt tracks and make sure nothing rubs. Okay. And by this being shorter, it puts a lot more tension on that piece down there, your idler here. It puts more tension on this because now it's sprung more by 3 inches. And since it's a narrower belt, you need more tension on it because you don't want it to slip. But as you can see, it's pretty tight. And then if you spin it fast, it doesn't look like it's slipping, but with weight, we'll see. So before I put anything permanently together, everything's still loose, I'm going to run the cycle, and then I'm going to look in here to track the belt, and then I'll lift this up to see if the belt's spinning. But leave the lid down first just in case something snaps like the belt and it flies out. It shouldn't fly out, but just in case. So I turned on the dryer. As you can see, everything's running pretty smooth. The belt's tracking, and then we'll check the bottom side to make sure the belt's also tracking good. So you can see this thing sprung back this way more versus being in this area. But it's tracking smooth. On the top, you didn't see any belt moving back and forth. So everything's pretty good. Everything's in the grooves. Now all we got to do is run load, put some heavier stuff in there and see. You can see that our burner is already lit. And basically what it does is it heats up this tube here, and that tube emits heat, which heats up your drum, like that. If you have an electric dryer, it's going to be a little bit different. You'll have a heating element on the back side. This one blows heat in here, and then it goes up through the back side, and it has like a canister back there that basically takes that heat and distributes it evenly over the top up here. So that piece right there, and it blows hot air into the inside. So it does a little bit of both. You'll get some heat dissipation in here just from the nature of the heat rising, but then it'll blow it through here, and then that blows it directly into your drum. Pretty simple and neat setup. You should be able to get yours running. I mean, the simplicity of it. The only complex things would be the electrical, honestly. If a motor goes out, it's easy to access the motor. If your burner goes out, you could replace the burner. Like, all this stuff is easily accessible. If your gauges go out or something like that, you could replace all that stuff. All that's taken care of. See how these things are clipped in? You have a screw here, screw there. That's all it is that's holding this one in particular, or just is that screw, and then this thing should slide forward and lift up, because when you lift it up, you can see the hooks. And then that'll take off this whole thing, and you should be able to see inside of it. You probably got some screws here underneath these caps. These might be beauty caps, but then you got a back panel here all the way around, which you could take off this and then see the electronics from the back side. There's plenty of ways to access this thing. It's pretty straightforward as far as like the components that they use or the simplicity that they use to get this thing to dry and everything. So everything's pretty achievable when you break it down part by part. Just don't tear into it without taking pictures or videos, so that way you always know if you take a wire off where it goes, if you dive into the motor, which wires plug into that particular side of the motor. So that's going to complete today's video on how to fix your dryer in this particular instance. Just put everything back the way you took it off, and you should be good to go. One last thing is, make sure you try to clean up as much dust and debris in your dryer as possible, and if there's any papers from like the schematics and stuff, take that stuff out, because you don't want it to catch fire. But that's going to complete today's video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It's greatly appreciated. If you want to see content like this and other content I'll be posting in the near future, consider subscribing. Until next time, I'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks for watching.